When I was a high school student, I remember that there was very little information in regards to African people. I didn't really know much about African history or even about the history of blacks in Canada. So when I became a teacher, I knew that it would be very important for me to integrate this information into the curriculum, as well as to push for, some sort of a black history course at whatever school I'd be teaching at, so that students could learn more information about the greatness of their people. So in regards to some of the courses I've taught for history, I've taught Canadian history and world history. And for Canadian history, right now there has been some efforts to integrate information about blacks into the textbooks. So for example, one of the textbooks that I'm using does speak about Africville and Black Railroad porters and Oscar Peterson, but outside that, that's pretty much it. So I make a lot of extensions, so I give students culminating activities where they get to pick a famous Canadian, and I give them a list of people that includes blacks, so they can have that option, so they can learn more about blacks who have built this country. In my world history class, there wasn't a section on ancient Africa, so what I had the students do is I gave them a list of ancient African kingdoms, and they had to research it as a culminating project, but I also gave them information on other topics such as slavery in Africa amongst Africans, the Arab slave trade, African kingdoms, and also the European slave trade, just to give them a broader sense of African history, compared to other civilizations that were around at the time. For black youth, I wanted them to basically have a sense of empowerment. And right away, I was faced with a few challenges. For one thing, there isn't a textbook for this course, so I basically had to rely on my general knowledge from my master's degree and my undergrad degree, but I also made connections with teachers, some of whom are here tonight, and that dialogue has helped in terms of finding resources and teaching strategies. I use videos such as Malcolm X, Amistad. There's a good documentary called The Bible and the Gun, and I just created my own worksheets. In addition, I felt that it was very important to connect the course to the lives of the students, so as much as possible I would bring in speakers. So I had Kwame Williams come in and do a drumming session. I had various spoken word artists come in, and again, it was just to make a connection to the real world and what was out there, thinking outside of the box. I didn't just want to give them textbook information about historical figures that lived a long time ago. I wanted them to also learn a bit about contemporary Black and African culture. There were a couple textbooks that I was able to use as supplementary material. One was called The African American Experience, which pretty much spoke about America, but still contained topics such as the Middle Passage, which I thought were important for the students to know. And there's another book called Slavery and Freedom that has recently come out by, I forget the publisher's name, but they sent a copy to me. And yeah, in regards to that, other resources were just not there. So I think it's important that students learn about blacks and what they've done here in Canada, because this is where they live. In regards to responses about the course, I got a lot of positive feedback. There were students that didn't know each other before the course, and now they're the best of friends. There's students who I gave certain roles. So I had one student who was the motivator, and his job was to always say something positive. And when I see him in the hallway, he still says, "Miss, I'm the motivator," and other students, will, they're still attached to their roles. Or they'll tell me, I really enjoyed learning about such and such, so I can still see that the course had meaning for them. If you are a parent and you're in a school where there isn't, a Black history course, I'd say, contact the principal, speak to the department head of the history department, and ask them to introduce the course, because it's being offered at a few schools, at least in the TDSB, and I've noticed that it's had a positive impact on students.